pleasure to be here. One of my favorite things is to be with other folks that are part of schools and doing our job to make them places that really are more holistic and really move at lots of levels in terms of how kids are feeling around themselves and what we can do with the school time. I'd like to start off with a quote from a dear friend, mentor, who's no longer with us on this plane, Angela Sarian. How many of you have heard of her name? Some of you, wonderful, wow. She says in her most recent book that I'm so glad she wrote as her last book, Living Gratitude, which has been a very powerful book for me, and especially if you decide to take her up on it and do the practices on a monthly basis. It's an incredible experience to do, and I did that with a group of people about 5 or so years ago. The benefits of living a grateful life are irrefutable, and we want to thank Bono for giving us the background around that of what we know about that. But as she says, it could be that gratitude's stabilizing and healthy effects are essential to humankind's sustainability and survival. She's put it up a notch, hasn't she? And I really do believe that's the case. And why I'm so excited to be here today that I could never have imagined really even 5 years ago that we would have a day that we could spend like this together and focus like this in this way. And I would just say that I know that many of us have come in here with this intention, but I'd like to just strengthen it right now as we call attention to it, and to simply say that we're given this day right now, all of us, as a gift. We chose to show up. We chose to be here together, and the opportunity to hear from the research, to sink deeper now into our hearts. That what we're talking about up there really becomes part of what we're experiencing today. That we fill our cup up, our bank account up, with gratefulness, that it overflows before we leave here today. I think that that's a unique experience that we can have today. And I encourage us, as we're trying to be better and better at what we do in our work, that we also use this day as an opportunity to do that in whatever we do. Angeles also has studied, she was a cultural anthropologist, by the way, and she studied many, many cultures of the world, particularly indigenous cultures. And she worked in various communities of the world and began to notice that in communities that worked, and gratitude was foundational to those communities, by the way, that there were 4 kind of sometimes spoken and sometimes unspoken agreements with each other that made that possible. And this, of course, was the first one, and this is what we've just done. To choose to be here right now together in this place and to spend this day together. And to choose to be present, and of course, many of us know that we're going to have to practice that not once by arriving, but many times over, right? That's what that, in fact, really means. So that's something that's not so easy to do when we realize that there's an expanded version of what we're talking about. You know, it's like, what do you mean? I'm here. I'm present. You know, yes, I'm present, but we know that there's a deeper connotation to that. And then this is another important one, and this may have happened with you already today. You may have had a talk with someone, or sharing, or what Bono might have said, that something was stirred in you that was deeper, that it's a little sign to you that that has more meaning for you and heart. So I would encourage you today to watch for that. I have a friend who, instead of taking the notes I just took on Bono because they were really good, and I wanted to, and I wasn't sure if he was going to share his slides. If my friend were here, she would be writing what was having heart and meaning for her as she was hearing what Bono said. What a different level, you know, of integrating, as we're experiencing something, what has heart and meaning for us, and taking those gems as well. They're just as important. The third one, to tell the truth without blame or judgment. And this also requires an attitude of gratitude, without a question. And then finally, the last one, which I love, especially when I have a certain amount of time, and I always usually take longer than I thought I would, not to be attached to the outcome, that I get to the end of the slide presentation. Have we used this time in the best way we can? That's really the most important. And that's what that last one means. So I encourage us to sort of keep this in mind as we move through the day. And I'd like to ask you this question. And I've asked it in many, many places of the world. So just take it in for a second. And really, really picture yourself being able to make this happen. That you go to sleep tonight and you wake up the next morning knowing that all the world's children would have learned one thing that they fully were able to integrate into their lives and live, whatever age they were, absolutely the rest of their lives knowing that to be integral to who they are. What comes up for you? Can we just have some hands?
Would be huge.
Would be huge. What would you choose?
Put one thing, or I don't know. Any one thing.
Yes, it would be huge, any one thing. What power, right? So think about what you would choose. Yes, right here.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt, they can do anything they set their mind to.
So go like this if you don't hear it, and so I'll repeat it then, otherwise I won't repeat it. Oh, I should repeat it for this, okay. That they could do anything you set your mind to, right here. I am enough.
I am loved.
I am loved. Empathy.
That they belong.
That they belong. Kindness. Say that again. They're valuable.
That they are on purpose.
That they are on purpose. So we can go on. I've done this many, many times. And now I'm going to have an experience where I've just seen a dear friend walk in who I haven't seen in a while. So I'm going to be in the present and welcome you, Vicki, and your friend. Or I think your sister, yes? That's your sister, that's your friend. Great, welcome. So I've done this activity many times over in many continents of the world. And just think about this, that those things that we just mentioned are still on the back burner for many of us in education. We have to sort of like, when people are not looking, sort of attend to those things, right? I mean, think about it. It certainly doesn't have a certain time period we're able to give to it. The most important things we're hoping for in the world for kids. I feel that gratitude and the emphasis on realizing that we can nurture, develop, and cultivate this in ourselves and in our children is something that could affect all of those things. And so this is quite a silent revolution going on. You know, I've spent a long time bringing in social and emotional learning and other things that, you know, we're finally beginning to see some roots of. But this is kind of coming in the back door, and it could be a very exciting thing if we begin to actually start practicing it and doing it more regularly and intentionally. So I'd like to introduce you to a ritual that you may know, you may not know. It's a ritual that comes from northern Natal in South Africa. And it's a wonderful ritual of how people say hello to each other that right away helps with belonging. It helps one to be present. And it's quite a difference from our hello, how are you? And by the time I'm ready sometimes to answer, the person has passed me. Have you had that experience? You know, about 3 years ago, I had hip surgery. And so when somebody said, how am I really wanted to tell them. But in most cases, when I looked up and was about to speak, they weren't there anymore, you know? So, I mean, I realized that that's not real. We're not really causing an exchange to happen or intentionally wanting an exchange to happen. In this culture, it's very, very different. Sawubona actually literally means, and I used to think it meant, I see you. And I used to think that for over a decade, until last summer, one of my graduate students came from northern Natal in South Africa. And when I was up to this slide, it only said, I see you. And she raised her hand and she said, Professor Lantieri, may I respectfully tell you something? And it was like, and as soon as she said, I'm from northern Natal, I lost it. Because I'm thinking, I have done something really not okay. And was fascinating. She had the courage in a room of 100 people to walk up to me and stood right in front of me. And she said, we see you. All my ancestors see you. All those that have helped me be right here now see you. And then the response is Sakona, which used to mean for me, I'm here. But at this point, my father showed up on the right and my mother showed up on the left, and they're not at this plane. And so I literally felt it. I was able to say back, we are here. We are here. So ever since then, in honor of her, I really want to offer both ideas of whatever feels comfortable to you. Because in a moment, but by the way, the order of exchange is really important. It's like, until you see me, I don't exist. It's as if you bring me into existence. You know what that's like when it happens to you. And you certainly know what it's like when it happens to a child. The lighting up. She sees me. You know, it could be a simple glance. And we know the power of what that looks like. You could imagine what it is like when kids grow up in that kind of environment. And I would say that kind of environment is really the foundational to gratitude. And so in a moment, I'm going to be asking you to get up one more time here, and I'm going to ask you to take one of the cards that are in the middle of your table. And this is where I'm going to need helpers. So there's some cards in the middle of the table. Just take one. And please raise your hand if either there are extra ones or you need one. And we're going to have people walk around and do a little exchanging. So you have an extra here? Great. So in a moment, I'm going to be asking you to walk around, and I'd like to introduce you to this ritual that it may become part of your active repertoire. By the way, in New York City in particular, if you walk into a school and you're walking down the hallway and a little kid says, I see you, they were probably part of our program because we have been doing this. And usually then the person would say, well, here's the cheat sheet, so you get it. And you're welcome to say, I see you, or we see you. I am here, you say. I see you. And now you're bringing the second person into existence. And the first person says, I'm here. And then just exchange cards and find another person. So this is just to practice it, to see if you want to use it in your own repertoire today and you're learning it. It's a way, I've used it quite a bit, by the way. Lots of principals in my principals group, when they have staff meetings, they begin it by having people go around and saying hello to a few people before they begin the staff meeting, and then they sit down. But they do it in this way, that it becomes more intentional. And when you hear the chime, just stop with where you are. But each time, just exchange the card. Instead of talking too much about it here, I'm attempting to help us make sure for the rest of the day we're in that space of gratitude. So just take a moment to think about the person or situation that you might like to dedicate this day to, if you've chosen to take on that idea. And just make it real for yourself. Just see if you can bring that situation or person into your consciousness throughout the day. What I'd like to do is just touch on some things that I will take a longer time with in the workshop. I began teaching at a time when Martin Luther King said this, and I feel we're still there. And I've spent a good deal of my education life with a thread that has come up for me in everything that I've done, that can we have situations in our schools where we are bringing all of who a child is into the picture, and we are educating not only children's minds but their hearts and spirits as well. And the field of social and emotional learning deeply affected my course in my trajectory in education. And Dan Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, was one of the things that really stirred in not only educators but everyone. In a year's time, his book was in 39 languages, by the way. So it really struck a chord that there might be something more important or equally important to academic and intellectual superiority than just that, and that emotions mattered. And as a result, he clearly began to take a stab at what we meant by emotional intelligence. And then a group of us began to say, so what does that look like in schools? And we began to say the words together, social and emotional learning. And you need to know that there were about 7 of us. We had never imagined that we were growing a field that is now gigantic. We really wouldn't have imagined it. And so sometimes, thank you very much, sometimes when we're called to be at a place at a certain time with a certain group of people, we have no idea, as today, by the way, we have no idea what's going to happen. And so Castle was founded, and this is Castle's clear mission to the world. And we know now from the research that SEL improves lots of things in children and students. We have this meta-analysis of over 200 studies. So we know all of this. We know that it also longitudinally makes a difference. We've followed this group of kids for a very long period of time. And by the way, most of these slides around Castle are on the Castle website. But also, one of the things that Castle did was to develop this framework of how to think about the social and pro-social development of children in schools. And how many of you are familiar with this framework of Castle's? Okay, a lot of you, great. So what I would simply say is that this work that we're doing fits beautifully into that. And I'm not going to take the time right now to say how it does. Just want to get to one slide. But in each one of the competencies, there's a strong connection to be made with the gratitude research. And in the activities book that you'll be getting if you're in the elementary group today, and all of them are getting on a flash drive, you'll see very clearly that we've crosswalked it. That this work in gratitude can place itself very beautifully into the work of social and emotional learning. I want to end with a short video that you may have seen before. And I would say this is like a good song. You can't see it enough. It's called Gratitude from Louis Schwartzberg and Brother David Stindl-Rast. How many of you are familiar with this video? Oh, not many of you. Some people, especially when they are working with a critical illness, watch this video every single day. And some people do it anyway every single day. We don't have to wait for something like that to necessarily happen. And by the way, we haven't spoken about this idea of that gratitude is something that stays there no matter what. You know, it's not necessarily about when good things happen, but Brother David Stindl-Rast and Angeles Arian talk about the idea that when something comes our way or we see something in the world that we could say, how could I be grateful for that? We can change that word into opportunity to learn. You know, that could begin to put us in a place of gratitude around what that thing or situation is. And I think we've got to do some work on that as well when we talk about this work, because that's equally important. So what I just ask you to do is to stay open-hearted as you watch this and see where it takes you.
When I watch TV, it's just some shows that are pretend. And when you explore, you get more imagination than you already had. And when you get more imagination, it makes you want to go deeper in so you can get more and see beautiful things. Like the path. If it's a path, it could lead you to a beach or something, and it could be beautiful.
You think this is just another day in your life? It's not just another day. It's the one day that is given to you today. It's given to you. It's a gift. It's the only gift that you have right now, and the only appropriate response is gratefulness. If you do nothing else but to cultivate that response to the great gift that this unique day is, if you learn to respond as if it were the first day in your life and the very last day, then you will have spent this day very well. begin by opening your eyes and be surprised that you have eyes you can open. That incredible array of colors that is constantly offered to us for pure enjoyment. Look at the sky. We so rarely look at the sky. We so rarely note how different it is from moment to moment with clouds coming and going. We just think of the weather, and even of the weather we don't think of all the many nuances of weather. We just think of good weather and bad weather. This day, right now, it's unique weather. Maybe a kind that will never exactly in that form come again. The formation of clouds in the sky will never be the same that is right now. Open your eyes, look at that. Look at the faces of people whom you meet. Each one has an incredible story behind their face. A story that you could never fully fathom. Not only their own story, but the story of their ancestors. We all go back so far. And in this present moment, on this day, all the people you meet, all that life from generations and from so many places all over the world, flows together and meets you here like a life-giving water if you only open your heart and drink. Open your heart to the incredible gifts that civilization gives to us. You flip a switch and there is electric light. You turn a faucet and there is warm water and cold water and drinkable water. It's a gift that millions and millions in the world will never experience. So these are just a few of an enormous number of gifts to which we can open your heart. And so I wish you that you will open your heart to all these blessings and let them flow through you, that everyone whom you will meet on this day will be blessed by you. Just by your eyes, by your smile, by your touch, just by your presence. Let the gratefulness overflow into blessing all around you. And then it will really be a good day.
And so I'd like to take the last 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes, and do an activity with you that I've done many times. Would somebody be willing to set the timer? Thank you. And so think about when you woke up this morning and you opened your eyes till now, what are you grateful for? And I am going to ask that you stand up and just speak it, and I'll sort of wave to you, and I won't repeat. So this is an activity, by the way, that when I was principal of a middle school, would get on the public address system in New York City, New York, East Harlem, and say, "It's our gratitude time." This was many years ago. And we would take, we didn't have the cell phones then. I had bought all timers from Radio Shack. I bought out all the Radio Shacks. And we would set the 3 minutes, and kids would just know that that is the way they were going to end their day. And after a while, what starts to happen for any of us that do this activity is that we start to actually say things that have happened with each other during the day and begin to note things that we as the teacher or the principal of the school would have never even known occurred during the day. So may we continue in this spirit of gratitude throughout this day, and I'm certainly grateful for being here and for sharing this with you right now. Thank you.